know you gotta pack up your tent and ride. Pack up your tent and ride. Good grub cooking on a fire tonight. Pack up your tent and ride.
Hi, my name is Fraser Douglas, and I was an avid tent camper for over 55 years. And on our camping trips, I especially enjoyed cooking great tasting meals with our cast iron cookware. And after I started cooking with cast iron, I bought and sold several pieces until I found the two pieces that seemed to work best in our camp kit. And now I want to share some of my tips for buying cast iron with you. I have used a cast iron skillet to cook cornbread for over 50 years. But about 10 years ago, I began using cast iron to cook most of our meals, both at home and in our campsite. And over these past 10 years, I have purchased 20 to 25 different vintage cast iron pieces. Some of these pieces are on display in our living room. Some are in our kitchen, and we use them for cooking various different kinds of foods. And two of them are in our camp kit for use when we go camping. As a result of buying and using these pieces over 10 years, I've formed a lot of opinions about what to look for when you're buying vintage cast iron for your camp kitchen. And now I want to share these opinions with you. First of all, let me explain why I think you should buy vintage pieces rather than new cast iron. And the answer is you can find very high quality vintage cast iron pieces for about the same cost as new, rougher pieces today. The second question is, what should you buy? I believe that most camping families should buy a good quality skillet that is approximately 10 inches in diameter and a good quality 5-quart Dutch oven without legs. These two pieces will be large enough to cook a wide range of delicious recipes for 4 to 6 people, but yet will be small enough to pack in most compact camp kitchens. Camping families should also try to find a flat lid with a little lip around the edge to fit their Dutch oven. But if they can't find a flat lid, they can buy a domed lid and use a cake ring to hold hot coals on top for baking. The third question is, where can you find good quality vintage cast iron cookware? To answer this question, you must first understand that there are 4 different types of cast iron buyers, and each of these buyers will give a different answer to this question on their YouTube videos. Antique dealers prefer to find their cast iron in estate sales, garage sales, and yard sales, where they can find cast iron pieces priced very low that they can easily clean up and resell for a profit. Cast iron collectors usually go through 2 stages. The first stage is to go everywhere, estate sales, yard sales, garage sales, and antique stores, and buy everything that catches their eye. In the second stage, they become much more selective and will develop relationships with a couple of antique dealers to help them find specific pieces, and they'll also go to eBay to look for those specific pieces. Chuck wagon cooks and other people that like to cook for large groups usually prefer new cast iron that they can buy from local retail stores. They avoid the estate sales, yard sales, and antique stores because these places rarely have the large pieces that they need, and because large vintage pieces needed to feed large groups of people will usually be much more expensive than newer pieces that they can buy in a local store. And the final group of cast iron buyers are small families that typically cook meals to feed 4 to 6 people. And I suggest that these families first look on eBay to find the 2 pieces of cookware that they'll need for their kitchen kit. Since they only need 2 pieces of cookware, they can easily find 2 very nice pieces and get them delivered in a few days. They will save the time, effort, and fuel cost of visiting several antique stores over several weeks. And the pieces will usually be almost ready for cooking when they arrive. Furthermore, the extra $10 to $20 they may pay for each piece will still be less than a piece of new cast iron of comparable quality. The final question is, what should you specifically look for? Again, each type of cast iron buyer looks for something slightly different. But as a small family cook, I look for 5 specific things. First, I want to be sure that the piece is not cracked, and if you buy on eBay, the dealer will almost always tell you whether it's cracked or not. But if they don't tell you, you can safely assume that it's not cracked if it's being sold by a reputable dealer with lots of positive reviews. Second, it should have a smooth cooking surface, because pans with a smooth cooking surface are easier to cook in and easier to clean. You can usually tell whether or not it has this surface by looking at the photos. But also look at the bottom of the pan to make sure it does not say made in the USA or made in some other country. Because if it says made in USA or another country, then it was made after the 1960s, and cast iron made after the 1960s tended to have a rougher cooking surface. Third, it should be relatively lightweight. More specifically, a 10-inch skillet should weigh less than 5 pounds, and a 5-quart Dutch oven without the lid should weigh less than 6.5 pounds. Now, dealers usually won't tell you the weight of the item, but if you know different types of cast iron, then you know which ones are lighter and which ones are heavier. For example, bottom-gated pieces, Griswold, Wagner, and old Lodge 3-notch pieces usually are lightweight, whereas Birmingham Stove and Range and newer Lodge pieces are much heavier. In addition, look at the thickness of the walls. Thin walls usually mean a lightweight piece, and thick walls usually mean a heavier piece. And if it has a helper handle opposite of the main handle, then most surely it's a heavier piece. Fourth, the piece should be relatively clean, so that it requires very little work to get it ready to cook. In particular, it should not have much rust, because removing a lot of rust requires a lot of time and effort. But pans with sticky baked-on food and pans with flaking seasoning are relatively easy to clean. Just put them in the oven for a couple of hours at 400 degrees and let them cook. But don't throw the pan into the campfire as suggested by some inexperienced people. And when I buy any pan, I always wash it once with soap and water before I first cook in it. The last thing I look for when shopping for cast iron is a reasonable price. And before looking at prices, you should understand that good quality cast iron makers sold some pans with a maker's mark and other pans that were unmarked. And as a general rule, those unmarked pans are just as good as the marked pans, but will be more reasonably priced than the marked pans. Keeping this in mind, you should be able to find a good quality 10-inch skillet plus shipping costs that would run no more than $40 to $50. And you should be able to find a good quality Dutch oven with no lid or with a glass lid for no more than $50 to $60. And you should be able to find a good Dutch oven with a domed lid for no more than $70 to $80. And you might be able to find a good flat-bottom Dutch oven with a flat lid for no more than $90 to $100. Before concluding, let me address a sixth thing that dealers and collectors think is important, and that is that the pan does not have a warped bottom, or in other words, the pan is not a spinner. I don't think this is an important factor because I own several pieces that are slightly warped, and they all cook just fine on a standard electric stove, on a gas stove, and on a campfire. And if the bottom of a pan is slightly warped, its price should be $20 to $30 less than it would be if it was a perfectly flat pan. Now, this concludes my list of tips for buying vintage cast iron cookware. I hope that you have enjoyed the video and perhaps learned something useful for your future gear acquisition plans. In the future, I hope to make a second video that will present my tips for cooking with vintage cast iron cookware. Thanks for watching.
Take more trips, travel further, visit more attractions, and spend less money. Go tent camping. Thanks for watching.